welcome one of our amazing sponsors, Blair and Cassandra from Binny, the people behind your infrastructure. Infrastructure defines communities and unites people with public and private spaces. Our wide range of integrated services deliver innovative approaches that renew environments, connect people, increase potential, support growing cities, and make a better, greener future possible. Please welcome Blair and Cassandra up to introduce our morning plenary. Thank you. Good to see you.
You too.
You look very bright and chipper. That's great.
I'm used to being one of the taller ones, but I've got competition. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to be a part of this amazing symposium for the first time in a few years. My name is Blair. This is Cassandra. What we wanted to do was just obviously thank you for the opportunity to engage in something that is incredibly important to us from our homeland in BC and Alberta. We're landscape architects, civil engineers, arborists, planners, specializing in sports, recreation, landscape architecture, and just generally open spaces. So while we're giving a little bit of a background about us, what we wanted to do is just pass along a little bit of about the work that we do and about some of the ways that we've tried to create connected communities. And in this forum, our vision and our mission at Binny in creating connected communities has really kind of transcended over the last 2 days here in terms of how the bigger picture of what community is defined as and how best we can, as consultants, as designers, as planners, work with the communities around us in all of the different areas that we play in. So thank you for that opportunity. I'll turn it over to Cassandra.
And I'm used to be the shortest one in the room, so there we go. So our final bundle today, Ways of Thriving, Nurturing Resiliency Plenary, examines the critical role parks play in creating resilience, both ecological and social, in the face of a changing climate. It calls us to draw lessons from nature and build stronger, healthier communities. The more diversity on the land, the more resilient it is to changes. We know this in terms of biodiversity from a scientific perspective, but it goes beyond that. A natural law that applies to humans and human systems as well. We are part of nature and thus are bound by these same terms. For parks to support resiliency, we must remove colonial barriers that isolate them from others, from society, and from other systems. Land is foundational to health, learning, economies, and cultures. Land wants to be resilient and to thrive, and will lead us to these goals if we listen and let it. I'm now going to welcome up Hannah Dudney, who will be leading this plenary. Hannah is a second-year PhD candidate in rehabilitation sciences at the University of Toronto. She has over 9 years of academic, professional, and volunteer experience working alongside people with disabilities. Her research focuses on improving accessibility in parks, including both visitor experiences and employment practices. As a research associate with the Engineering Health Lab, she also contributes to several Accessibility Standards Canada-funded projects on accessible parks, travel, and tourism design. Hannah takes a practical and strengths-based approach, centering the abilities and needs of park users and employees with disabilities and park management teams. Please welcome Hannah.
Oh, you want me to use that mic? Sure. It's okay. Should I not speak into this one at all? All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm so glad you're all here. It's actually a pretty full room, which as academics, we're not always used to seeing that on the last day. So that's fantastic. Okay, I'm really excited to introduce our student session and our fellow student presenters. So first off, I'm going to introduce Michaela Carr. Michaela is a graduate student at UNBC, who through collaboration with Spinal Cord Injury BC and BC Parks, explored the lived experience of persons living with disability as they navigated and engaged in BC park spaces. She's extending her research to consider and celebrate Indigenous-led planning and land management practices that uplift Indigenous worldviews and of access and inclusion. Michaela is currently a research associate with the Northern Community Planning and Design Lab at UNBC, dedicated to building connections in the North and supporting community-based research, and a member of UNBC's Grassroots Accessibility Ambassadors Initiative. Welcome, Michaela.
Okay, I think this is good. I'm ready whenever you are. Okay, so hello, my name is Michaela Carr. I'm a graduate student from the University of Northern British Columbia. I'm grateful to be sharing here on Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis people. Today, I'm going to take you through my research journey to provide you with a rich sense of how parks and protected areas can foster a strong sense of belonging for persons with disabilities. Oh, this Pechakucha is kind of fun, isn't it? So I want everyone to take a moment and close your eyes. Think of a green space that matters to you. Take a deep breath. What do you see, feel, hear, smell? What was your reason for coming to this place? Okay, you can open your eyes. So each of us will embody nature differently based on our identities and individual preferences. Some of us may experience parks with general ease, while others will come up against barriers because space was not developed with them in mind. So in partnership with members from Spinal Cord Injury BC, representing lived experience of someone who uses a wheelchair, their life partner, someone who has a sight impairment, someone who has memory loss, and someone who has a young child, we set out to various parks to explore what is working to meet access requirements and really what is not. So disability is socially and culturally produced by examples like these. A step without strip denoting an elevation change, a blocked view from the river, the perspective of a person with who uses a wheelchair. And these are also social barriers. Ableism is a pervasive network of attitudes, beliefs, and processes that exclude persons with disability. So centering community partner expertise, we encourage team members to document their interactions in these spaces using Polaroid cameras. PhotoVoice uses visual and qualitative data to represent the lived experiences of people who are frequently marginalized. And yeah, so people got to choose what they wanted to document. We also used journals to enhance group discussion. We asked what they were thinking, feeling, and doing, what enabled or hindered the quality of their participation, and whether the experience promoted feelings of inclusion or exclusion. Naturally, folks focused on a continuum of belonging rather than a false binary of inclusion. And so I want you to think back to the park that you envisioned at the beginning. If you were thinking of a stellar view with cool bodies of water, these are what we call key features, the reasons to visit a site, like this one at Mount Robson. So if a site is 99% accessible and 1% isn't, people are likely to leave if they have a disability. So for our team member who uses a wheelchair, they felt like they could get the same experience as everyone else. They could get away from the sights and the sounds of the highway and really feel into the forest with a boardwalk like this. But there were countless times where team members were excluded from key features, where collective enjoyment of the experience was disrupted and fragmented. Both the person excluded and other group members were impacted by not being able to share in these experiences. Trust within the group, though, made the next view of the waterfall possible for a wheelchair user. He trusted us enough to support him down a steep hill that was riddled with roots. He was able to take risks and have fun. I'm not saying let's not make places accessible, but interdependence and relying on people and relying on accessibility devices are just a part of being human. And we define cognitive space as the ability of the thinking mind to fade into the background and not be so on, to really feel into the body. Opposite to what I'm doing now, speaking to a room of passionate people, my mind is fully on and I forget that I have a body. So people are seeking nature experiences where they can relax and turn their thinking mind off. So anticipation or anxiety of encountering new sites can also take away from overall experiences. The team expects to encounter barriers when they go out. Can I negotiate this barrier? Am I safe? Will I find my way back? And will I have someone to read the sign to me if I need it?
One team member describes this as an accessibility radar app that's always running. So benches, really simple, turned out to be one of the most impactful experiences that people had. Our person with a cognitive impairment was able to remember where they were and where they were going when they were able to sit down on a bench and just take a break. And for our team member with the sight impairment, proper placement of signage is critical. If it's too low or too far away, they're unable to get close enough to read the sign. And this is where the choice of font, text color, and contrast can also be major components of legibility of the information on site. The most effective wayfinding systems are simple and intuitive. So directional signage with arrows and a brief description of what is down that trail was easily understood by everyone. While maps can be helpful for some, people with cognitive impairments like dementia usually navigate better following simple landmarks and value consistency across park systems. And representation also mattered immensely to one of our team members as a queer woman in her 60s. She nearly cried when she saw the pride flag on one of the displays. She saw herself represented in a mannequin, climbing a wall, presenting as a woman in a typically male-dominated space. So representation isn't everything, but it is one way that we can show people they belong. And infusing sites with local art, history, and culture was a touch that many appreciated. The loon sign on the right was created by a local elementary school student who discusses why we should care about loons and how to respect them. Team members connected more with a sign that shows belonging rather than generic mass-produced signs that say that you belong. And so this audio station beside the sign was equipped with music from a local band, spoken Wet'suwet'en language, and a brief history of the area. The diverse delivery and type of information created accessible opportunities for bonding and connection to place. Everyone in the group danced. There's a really embarrassing video somewhere. A short accessible trail at the base of Mount Robson had the sign depicting the land and history through the words of the local Simpcw First Nation. Some of the team had been to the site numerous times and did not know about the history of colonization here. They were able to feel connected and share in a sense of belonging and responsibility that comes with that. So signage accompanied by meaningful actions of reconciliation and partnerships with Indigenous people can be one step that we can take. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Michaela. It was great to see like these real world examples of what you actually saw when you were out in the field. And we'd like to give you a gift to thank you for your time. Thank you so much. Okay, wonderful. So next I'll be introducing Catherine Reining. Catherine Reining is a PhD candidate at Western University, researching equitable access to parks and protected areas to promote health. Her work focuses on protected area policy, planning, and management, emphasizing the health benefits of nature conservation and environmental education. Catherine holds a Master's of Environmental Studies and a BA in Geography from Wilfrid Laurier University, along with a Bachelor of Education from Brock University. She is a lab and project coordinator at Wilfrid Laurier's Department of Geography and Environmental Studies, and a member of the IUCN WCPA Health and Wellbeing Special Group. Welcome, Catherine.
Okay, thanks, Hannah, and good morning, everyone. Good to go. Okay, so I'm pleased to be here today to talk about some recently published work that we're doing looking at public interest, barriers, and enablers related to nature prescription programming in Canada. And this project was actually led by Dr. Chris Lemieux at Wilfrid Laurier University, along with a great team of co-authors, including Melissa Lem with BC Parks Foundation, Mark Grew at UNBC, and some others. So when we're talking about better health, we're trying to move beyond the healthcare system to talk about the social, economic, and environmental determinants of health. And there's a lot of research out there that spending time in nature does improve our health and well-being benefits. And yet, despite this, a lot of the distribution, the accessibility of high quality areas really aren't there. So across health equity and nature-based recreation literature, when we talk about the concept of barriers, we're talking about that gap between people's motivations to experience and their ability to actually do so. And so we group these barriers into 3 categories, of course, right? We have structural barriers, which are factors that intervene in participation, cost, weather, time. We have interpersonal barriers, which are the individual psychological states and perceptions. Do you have the skills to go? Do you have the interest in going? And then we have our interpersonal barriers, our relationships and our interactions with other people. Do you have someone to go with? Do you feel safe when you're going? Now, positioned at the nexus of human health and nature conservation, we have nature prescription programming, which has emerged as a really novel preventative health tool, used as an alternative or a complementary approach to our mainstream medicine. So nature prescriptions, for those that don't know, comprise written directives by healthcare professionals that are for visiting natural spaces for supporting health promotion. And adoption of the nature prescription programs is really becoming unprecedented both globally and especially here in Canada. In fact, in 2022, the Canadian Medical Association became the first national medical organization to endorse ParkRx, which is our national prescription program. And there are now over 15,000 medical practitioners prescribing nature for human health here in Canada. Now, nature prescriptions also are positioned as a mechanism to connect people with nature and to actually support pro-environmental behaviors, such as supporting biodiversity conservation, which kind of has those leading effects. Yet with all this said, there's actually very little understanding of public awareness and interest in potential barriers and enablers to participating in these programs. So here we are. We looked into it for you. So with that said, our cross-sectional survey of over 3,500 Canadians revealed that 75% of Canadians would be more likely to visit nature if a healthcare professional recommended it. However, 92% have never heard of nature prescription programs. Now, we also revealed some structural, intrapersonal, and interpersonal barriers to accessing nature, health, and well-being. And the top 5 barriers that came up for people was lack of time, unfavorable weather, it being too crowded, it being poorly maintained, and other activities that maybe take our time away from spending time in nature, having to drive the kids to soccer practice, hockey games, things like that. Barriers were particularly pronounced for newcomers to Canada, the BIPOC community, young adults, individuals who self-identify, and individuals with children, which is maybe not surprising, but certainly reinforces some of what we thought. Now, we also identified key enablers that could reduce barriers for Canadians to being more effectively and equitably participating in nature prescription programs. And the top 5 enablers, the top one was health insurance benefits to cover the cost of accessing nature. We had free passes, free transportation, discounted passes, discounted transportation. So clearly the most preferred enablers were all cost related. And again, women, Canadian citizens by naturalization, non-Canadian citizens, the BIPOC groups, and all reported kind of a stronger desire for those enablers. So when we think about some of the key takeaways from our findings here, the first is that while public awareness of nature prescription programs is low, the interest is very high if recommended by a trusted healthcare professional, suggesting that nature contact would benefit an individual's health. And if we think about the ParkRx program, there's been a lot of media coverage, a lot of social media, televised coverage in Canada, and yet a lot of people have never heard of this program. So this is an interesting finding because there's clearly a disconnect here between public awareness and interest with actually getting out into these spaces. So we need to kind of better understand why this isn't sinking into the public consciousness more. Second, if we go back to our barriers to participating in nature prescription programs that exist, particularly for some acute suite of socio-demographic and subpopulation groups. So those barriers were really pronounced. And nature interventions that preferentially benefit people in more privileged social positions could ultimately widen health inequities even further. So nature has the potential to be an accessible and low-cost supplement to healthcare, but that's going to require that practitioners in the health and conservation sectors really work together to try to minimize those barriers to participating, especially for some of those subpopulations. So kind of going back to what we were talking about yesterday, going from taking our knowledge and actually doing and having those actions moving forward. And so with that, finally, to harness the full potential of nature prescription programs, enablers such as health insurance coverage, free access to parks, and free transportation could be used to enhance evidence-based and inclusive programming. While there are initiatives underway, like for example, ParkRx has partnered with Parks Canada and their patients get free passes with no charge. More work is needed. So reimbursement of the cost was clearly important to a lot of participants. And having things like health insurance and benefits coverage could actually legitimize nature prescription programs further and potentially reduce those barriers, allowing a wider audience to be able to participate. That was a lot of information, really fast. If you're interested, the full article citation is up there on the screen if you want to read it. And you can also connect with me over email or, of course, during the rest of our time here together this week. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Catherine. I'd always wondered how that program was going, so I'm glad that you had that presentation. That's amazing. Okay, wonderful. So now I'm going to be introducing Augustina. And Augustina Cohen is a Master of Arts in Leisure Studies student at Dalhousie University. Her research explores how youth engage with nature to promote well-being and equitable access to nature using photo voice methods. With 10 years of experience volunteering and working with children, youth, and adults in outdoor recreation, Agustina is passionate about ensuring all youth have access to safe and welcoming outdoor spaces. Outside of her research, she enjoys spending time outdoors by coaching rugby, hiking, camping, and sea kayaking around Nova Scotia. Welcome, Augustina.
Everyone. All right. I'm good. Hi, everyone. My name is Agustina. I'm a master's student from Dalhousie University, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about my master's thesis work. The title of it is Empowering Diverse Youth Voices to Enhance Equitable Access to Nature and Wellbeing in Nova Scotia, a photo voice study. As mentioned, I come to this work with about 10 years of experience as an outdoor recreation service provider. Throughout this work, I have seen the transformative effects that nature-based experiences can have for youth and young people, and I truly believe that all young people should have access to safe and welcoming outdoor spaces. Couple pictures of my office when I'm not writing my lit review. So this research is really built upon the existing literature that shows the benefits of nature and well-being for young people. Those can be mental health benefits, physical health benefits, social and emotional health benefits. However, we also know that youth from equity-owed communities do face greater barriers to accessing nature and nature-based services. This leaves a bit of a gap in the research that exists right now. And it's going to show up here. There we go. There is a lack of studies that collaborate with youth. So within this research on nature and youth well-being, there's a lot of studies on youth and less studies that work with youth. As well, we know that even less studies explore the relationship between nature and well-being among youth from equity-owed communities. And that's really something that we're trying to start doing with our project. So our project has three main aims. The first being to just explore youth experiences in nature. The second being to understand barriers and facilitators to getting outside in Nova Scotia. And the third is to create a youth-informed action plan to share with multi-sectoral stakeholders and find ways to make nature-based services more accessible for young people within the province. To do this, we worked with an incredible community partner called Love Nova Scotia. For those who aren't familiar, LOVE stands for Leave Out Violence. It is a Black-led community organization dedicated to supporting diverse and underserved youth in the province. We worked with the Love Leadership Program, where youth have been selected to become ambassadors of nonviolence in their communities, and they were really incredible to work with. We also did photo voice research, and for those who aren't familiar, photo voice is a participatory action research method, which gives participants and co-researchers cameras to capture their experiences. And also the aim is to foster individual and community reflection and dialogue, as well as reach decision makers. And that is really one of the main goals. So for our project, we had 12 youth co-researchers between the ages of 17 and 22 years old, 8 of which identified as belonging to an equity deserving or an equity owed group. And within our group of co-researchers, we also had representation from urban, semi-urban, suburban, and rural regions in the province. And our project followed like a traditional photo voice study design. So it began with recruiting participants. We did some photography workshops with a professional photographer. Youth co-researchers were given cameras to document their experiences. We did a participatory analysis followed by knowledge mobilization. And we really, really want to focus on connecting with end users and stakeholders at the end of the project. As mentioned, we did a collaborative analysis, which involved 3 steps. The first was selecting. Youth were able to pick photos that were most meaningful to them. The second was contextualization, where we took the youth through a series of questions called the showed method to start breaking down some of the stories and themes among their individual photos. And the last step, codifying. In this step, youth worked together to start to create themes and stories among their shared experiences to try and come up with collective themes and stories to share. And once we did this process, it involved like sticky notes and markers and whiteboards and kind of creating a bit of a final brainstorm. We started thinking about what can we do next. So we just finished the first part of this project in May. And so what I'm showing today is a very, very small sample of our preliminary findings. And the pictures I have on the wall today are just what came out of that collaborative analysis piece with our youth after the first and the second round. And as mentioned, we really wanted to start looking at youth experiences. And so one youth said, I feel like when I'm in nature, it helps me regulate my nervous system and like release stress. I feel like that's the biggest thing for me, especially if I'm near water and waves. Hearing waves can be really calming. I think that probably speaks to a lot of people in this room as well. The next thing that we also wanted to explore were barriers. And while we identified a variety of barriers, this quote really struck me. It said, but at the same time, there's a part of me where I feel like the playground really isn't like it's not meant for someone my age anymore, right? So starting to get into that older youth demographic and like how do we make spaces more welcoming for them as well? And of course, we also wanted to look at facilitators. What makes it easier? What makes it more exciting? What makes it more fun to get outside in nature? And I really liked what this participant said. They said, spending time with my best friends makes it a lot easier to spend more time in nature because it makes you feel happy when you get your friends out outside, having fun, laughing, goofing off like old times and enjoying life. So I think it's really the simple things as well that get us outside. Once we did this collaborative analysis piece, we really wanted to get into action planning, right? How can we share our findings? So we asked the youth two main questions. The first was, what are the most pressing issues that impacts youth and mental health in Nova Scotia today? And the second question, what does a youth-friendly community look like to you? We started thinking about how we could use our photos and the stories that we came up with together to answer these questions and to share these questions with the community. And working together with the youth, we came up with two main ideas. The first is the development of a zine. For those who aren't familiar, it's like a magazine with photos. And the next is a photo exhibit where the youth came up with ideas of doing an outdoor photo exhibit to kind of invite family and friends, but also to have community members of the public come by. So that's kind of where we're at now. And throughout the summer, we're planning on further developing the zine and the photo exhibit with our youth. And then hopefully in the fall, we're going to host an outdoor community photo exhibit. And I didn't get to mention this, but this is part of a larger project. And in spring 2026, we're hoping to host a final Youth and Nature Summit to share findings with the greater community and with as many end users as possible. So this project really goes beyond just documenting youth experiences in nature. We really wanted to also highlight the opportunity for youth capacity building, learning new skills, and becoming advocates for their community, as well as a really strong emphasis on knowledge mobilization, getting the findings of this research beyond the academic sphere. And that's why I'm here today sharing it with all of you. And quickly, I just wanted to thank the youth and the staff at Love. They were amazing to work with. I really had so much fun calling this school, as well as my supervisor, sons in the room, Michelle, Becky, Maddie, the whole outdoor health team has been really a dream, and our funding sponsors, because research like this is important and we couldn't do it without them. So thank you so much, everybody. And follow us on Instagram. We just got an Instagram. So if you're curious, let me know and I'll share the handle.
Thank you so much. It was so great to see your research process and how you involved all the youth. Yeah. Thanks so much. Okay. Next, I will be introducing Anastasia Misa, who is a PhD candidate in the Faculty of Kinesiology, Sport, and Recreation at the University of Alberta, specializing in inclusive recreational planning and equitable access to leisure spaces. She holds a master's degree in planning from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana. Anastasia's research investigates how perceptions and experiences of accessibility shape recreational participation and overall well-being amongst marginalized populations. Drawing on her background in planning, she explores spatial and environmental justice frameworks to highlight inequities in built and natural environments. Her work aims to inform community-centered practices and policies that foster sustainable, inclusive, and equitable recreation spaces for all. Welcome, Anastasia.
Hi everyone. So It's quite interesting that we are talking about trees and tree planting and doing that in a form of a storytelling, because I grew up in Ghana, in Africa. And when I was a child, we used to come together, the kids in the neighborhood come together, we sit around a mini bonfire under a tree. And then we have usually an elder person, maybe a grandparent or an auntie telling us a story. And it was really fun. And before they start the story, they say story, story, and we all say story. So kindly indulge me. I'm going to say story, story, and I would like you to respond story before we start our presentation. So story, story. Oh, okay. But we were more excited saying it, but I'll take that. I'll take it. So, yeah. Now, before I continue, I just want to say that if you see me pausing mid-sentence, don't worry. It's just my unborn baby saying she didn't sign up for a conference. So we'll get there. I'm ready. Okay, so trees and tree planting. It's not just about trees. It's about people. It's about the absence or the presence of greenery in our neighborhoods and in spaces, and how it affects and shapes the lives of Black and people of color in our communities, or equity deserving communities. So this research was an initiative by the City of Edmonton, partnering with Gel Lab, which is a Justice in the Environment of Leisure Lab at the University of Alberta, headed by Dr. Josie Marie Godwell, who is in the house now. And I'm a research assistant at the Gel Lab. So it was more of a research. Where we do in Gel Lab is to focus on the barriers that marginalized populations face when it comes to participation in leisure. And historically, Black people have been said to participate less in outdoor recreation. And this is not because of a lack of interest, but usually because of the barriers that they might face, or the systemic barriers or socioeconomic barriers that they might face when it comes to participating in outdoor leisure. And these constraints could be due to poor management. It could be due to lack of shaded areas or trees, or the social-cultural considerations that are not included when it comes to planning for green spaces within their neighborhoods, or they not being involved and feeling left out. So this project, which is termed as a Greener Should Grow by the City of Edmonton, is a project that aims at planting 2 million trees in Edmonton. And they were doing that based on a mapping tool, a green infrastructure mapping tool that mainly focuses on physical indicators like population density or urban heat, which is all good and very useful, but it leaves out the lived experiences of the people and the voices that should be heard when it comes to planning. So that's what this research sought out to do, to bring in the qualitative insights, to layer the data with voices so that we know what exactly that the people that they're building the green spaces for would want to have. And so we wanted to do this going through a spatial justice lens that would focus on distributive justice, procedural justice, looking at recognition and relational justice. Who are those involved in the planning? Is it an afterthought? Is it from the beginning of planning? And how is it done? And so we went to the neighborhood, we spoke to residents. We wanted to find out what are their views about the trees? How do they benefit from trees? What do trees mean to them? Where do they want trees planted? In their neighborhood, do they have enough trees? And so we did this co-creating the design with the City of Edmonton. We used participatory mapping tools. We used focus group discussions. We had about 100 participants participating in this research. And most of the patterns that were realized from the conversation centered around the 3 things that we looked at from the spatial lens, which was the distribution of trees, the stewardship and management, and also the socioeconomic considerations. So for example, for the distribution of trees, mainly people mentioned or participants mentioned that it's not just about having the trees, but where are they planted? You know, in my neighborhood, well, maybe we have trees, some are sparsely distributed, some are densely populated, but who determines that? Who determines where the trees should be situated? Also, people voiced out that they wanted fruit trees, not just, let's say, pine trees, or, you know, they wanted to look out for the cultural and the practical benefits of the trees. So they mentioned that it was quite interesting for them that maybe back at home in India, they had fruit trees like mangoes where you could just walk in the park and pluck a mango and, you know, just to enjoy. So on stewardship and management, another quote that came in, I quote, "We don't really know how to engage or what to do if we wanted more trees." So there was a clear disconnect between policy and the public. Now, people don't know. So if we want a tree to be planted or cut down, who do we ask? Who do we go to? You know, so Then it got a bit more personal or emotional because people started talking about their relationship with trees having a symbolic meaning. Some of them had that spiritual connection to a tree and they didn't really see it as just being a tree, but something that they identified it when it comes to their tradition and their family, their background. And there was also that issue of a cultural shift and traditional knowledge being lost. So people mentioned that previously they had their grandparents telling them about the benefits of a tree, maybe some being medicinal. They even knew the names of the trees. But now most of our kids are engaged in their devices more than going out there to enjoy nature or to have outdoor participation in recreation, probably due to all the barriers that they might face. Now, heat island and climate change makes this more urgent because it shouldn't be a case of just planting trees being aesthetics. It is about justice. It shouldn't be that just a few people would have to enjoy sitting under a shade during a hot afternoon. It shouldn't be a luxury. Everybody should be able to participate in it. And so having that inclusive, like we are saying, Canadian inclusive green spaces is something that we should look out for, not just from doing it at a surface level as a one-time engagement, but continually engaging people when it comes to providing green spaces. So how do we engage? We came up with a Connect toolkit with this acronym Connect and each letter in the acronym representing something to help engage with equity deserving communities when it comes to providing green spaces and including them in the planning. So this research sought to introduce the qualitative insights, bring the social considerations when it comes to planning for green spaces, and not just have the data or physical indicators or quantitative data mainly, but having the lived voices, hearing out from people who engage in these spaces and how we can help them to participate more and increase and not continually perpetuate the inequities that we are seeking to avoid. So again, it's not just about trees, it's about people. It's about including everyone, especially identify populations who have various needs, and these needs could be contentious, but involving everyone when it comes to plan. So I also want to say thank you to our partners, to the City of Edmonton, University of Alberta, to the organizations that helped us to recruit people, Action for Healthy Communities, and everyone here for listening to my presentation. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for getting us to think more deeply about where trees are planted, why they're planted, and what they mean. Thank you. Okay. Can I put this down safely? Yeah. Okay. So you all already got my introduction. And now I'm gonna do my presentation. I am ready when you are. Okay, today we have a room full of people with an interest in parks, obviously. Many of us work in parks, many of us study in parks, live in parks, or are connected to parks in other ways. We know the value of parks, and we all have ideas of ways that parks should be managed. Especially after these few days, we all know how vital park leadership is, including management and employees, to fostering a sustainable pathway forward in parks. So I next ask you, have you ever considered who is leading parks in their path forward? What employees are we including in our workforces? And what cascading impacts does this have? My research focuses exactly on that. I want to figure out how parks can be inclusive employers, specifically of people with disabilities. You may be wondering, well, how many people with disabilities currently work in parks? It's clear to me that when I dived into this topic, we know quite little about disability representation in our parks across Canada. However, Parks Canada's Employment Equity Report really gives us something to go off of and it propels the need for this type of work. As noted in the graph on this slide, there's some historically informed patterns, including the fact that people with disabilities aren't currently hired at market availability. When workplaces lack diversity and exclude people with disabilities, among others, in overt and covert ways, there are cascading impacts, not just for employees, but for parks as a whole, with lost opportunities for innovation, creativity, productivity, inclusion awareness, and improved park user experiences. Maybe you're thinking, well, what about other park organizations or my park organization? While other park employment data is not always publicly available, we do know that people with disabilities are almost 2 times as likely to experience unemployment compared to non-disabled Canadians. So this trend likely does translate to the workplaces that you come from and the parks that you are in. So what do I plan to do about this? Thanks to the guidance of community advocates and feedback from park employees with disabilities, I've designed a project that hopes to get closer to creating more inclusive park work opportunities for people with disabilities. The first stage of this project aims to better understand the lived experiences of people with disabilities that either work for or would like to work for a Canadian national, provincial, or territorial park. This will help us understand beyond the numbers what's happening in parks and what helps and hinders people with disabilities from working in them. To give an overview of some preliminary findings so far, I've had the privilege of talking with 8 people with disabilities who work in parks, as well as 8 people with disabilities who are community members or non-park staff, who are interested in working in a park one day. Particularly, barriers related to transportation, seasonality, and information have emerged so far. Discussions of transportation were not only limited to the challenges of getting to park jobs, but also related to transportation in related to the park landscape in general, specifically in job applications, where both park staff and non-park staff share that requirements for driver's licenses are commonplace in park job applications, even though driving wasn't always a requirement for those specific jobs. A park staff shared, often it's not necessary to be able to perform the actual job itself when referring to driver's licenses. And a non-park staff shared, have we had this description since the 70s and it's been reused over and over? Is this actively what we need for the role to be completed when referring to driver's licenses? Next, seasonal barriers. Park staff shared their concern for their hearing devices being damaged during inclement weather and harsh weather, knowing a replacement device wouldn't be offered if damaged. Another park staff shared that their experience with summer staff was inclusive, but that things changed when the summer term ended and those staff left. For example, here, that park staff shared, as the summer students leave and it's just the older, more permanent staff, it feels a little more, I wouldn't say entirely negative, but it's not openly supportive. Access to information about park jobs was also essential, but going beyond our simple job descriptions. Participants shared their preconceptions about what a typical park job looks and feels like, typically a park ranger, suggesting that we really need to work on making the wide variety of park jobs known to the public. A person who was interested in working for a park shared that when thinking of park jobs, the first job that comes to mind would be working outside and doing maintenance, landscaping, or park ranger duties and things like that. So that would be something that may make me not want to apply. I'm really eager for more themes in this first study to emerge, to understand these concepts more deeply, and to amplify lived experiences in a meaningful and ethical manner that really protects participants' identities, and hopefully to get to the bottom of some of these barriers. We are still recruiting participants for this study with compensation for their time. This includes people with disabilities 15 years or older who either work for a national, provincial, or territorial park, or who don't currently, but would like to one day. This includes people who may have interviewed for park jobs or who have looked into park jobs as well. If you'd like to participate or spread the word, feel free to come see me after. As this stage of our study is slowly wrapping up here, I'm preparing for our next stage, which focuses on figuring out what influences park employers to hire people with disabilities. This survey will ask park employers questions about barriers that they may experience to hiring people with disabilities and supporting people in the workplace, and figure out what may be helping or hindering them from hiring people with disabilities. Eventually, we'll bring together all this information to co-design strategies to address some of the barriers that were discovered in this study. And hopefully to create waves of change so the future of our parks are as diverse as their leadership is. our goal is hopefully that instead of this, parks can look more like this. Importantly, I can't do this work without all the support of community organizations and park organizations, and I'm really, really thankful for everyone who's supported this project so far. It's been a pleasure to be here over the last couple of days, and thanks to you all. I'm really hopeful for the future of inclusive parks starting from within. Thank you.